What's going on? Slip is here with match 2 of our Esper Brain Control League. So we see this opener, which seems pretty good. I mean, we have early interaction in Path and Alliance, we have a telling time to set things up, get our third land, and we have the combo. I would call this a snap keep, especially on the play. Temple Garden, Birds of Paradise, so this could mean a lot of things. I fetch Watery Grave here, and it's possible that this is representing some kind of like slightly janky land destruction deck, maybe. But I don't think so with a Temple Garden. Like if it had been Stomping Around Birds, maybe. But as it stands, we have Brain in a Jar, so land destruction doesn't really do anything against us, which is nice. We're just gonna tap Jar here. Otherwise, the Verdict we just drew is gonna be good. So now we're looking at Bance. Probably Spirits doesn't play birds. So we're probably looking at Knightfall here. Selfless Spirit, going to be a little annoying with Verdict. However, we can play a land here and either Path or Blessed Alliance the Spirit. So I decide to Path it now. We can avoid Spell Queller. If he runs Spell Queller, he may not. I don't know how many Knightfall lists actually run that card. It's always possible. Opponent plays another Selfless Spirit. Swings in with Hierarch. I'm just going to Telling Time. I feel like Peer is probably better than Spell Pierce here. Since we have Verdict, I'm not super worried about Collected Company at this point. We're assuming that our opponent is going to attack with the Spirit next turn, and we are going to Blessed Alliance it. So I just play this untapped. Maybe that's loose. Okay. Opponent swings in. I like becking here and just blocking for one. Our opponent scoops right away, so that's great. Whatever we were going to draw, our hand was very good against this particular matchup, so that's good. Moving on to game 2. Sideboarding. I obviously like the Supreme Verdict. I wasn't super crazy about the Engineered Explosives or the Ruined Halos or the Blessed Alliances. So this is a pretty soft sideboarding plan. I left in Spell Snares for Kasali Pride Mage in case that's relevant. Spellskite could be a pain, but Selfless Spirit is really annoying when you're running a couple of Supreme Verdicts. So I brought that in. I took out the Spell Pierce. I took out a Logic Knot. So that's about it. I didn't bring in the SRAMs, incidentally. One could do that. I chose not to, but that's a judgment call. I'm not sure what's right there. This hand seems fine. This is more or less just where we want to be, honestly. Even as good as having the combo in our opener, we just have cards that are like strong in the matchup and just play like a Drago deck with Verdicts and play a Jar at the same time. So one question is like whether we want to play a Jar turn 2. We might, in case our opponent plays Spell Queller, can't counter it. On the other hand, we'll just be playing straight into Kasali Pride Mage. So since we don't really have any counters, we went down a Logic Knot 2. I feel comfortable just shipping here and playing Telling Time on our opponent's end step. And then we can untap with Brain in a Jar when we have better information. Our opponent cracks a fetch and does nothing. Nope, plays a Knight of the Reliquary. So that's good. So given that you played that Knight, alright, Snapcaster Mage seems totally fine given what we have in our hand and what we're playing against. I do not mind it. I'll just take Snap and a Delta. I don't think I mind playing out Brain in a Jar and just pathing this Knight here. And we want to probably path the Knight now so that he doesn't get to like tutor some crazy land. Kessick Wolf Run, for example, could be kind of a blowout. Opponent plays Stony Silence, so that's interesting. Stony Silence against an Esper Charm deck, slightly suspect, but that's okay. Might as well path this. I don't really want to let that card untap. Now he only has 2 left in his deck, so that's good. We can snap path something if he does, some kind of shenanigans here. Let's get our breeding pool. Not playing out this Godless Shrine yet. Could. Collected Company, we can't really do much about that. Opponent gets Knight of the Reliquary and Tireless Tracker. That's a bit of an issue. Those are good cards. Path is gonna be noticeably worse, given the Tireless Tracker triggers. So we're probably gonna want a Verdict pretty soon. We need to make sure our opponent doesn't hit a Spell Queller here. Opponent can also tutor for Kessig Wolf Run at this point. So holding this Ghost Quarter is nice. This is going to encourage our opponent to do that now. If we have to, we can path something, and then that's good. Opponent Cocos in response? Chords. Is our opponent Chord? Chords for 2. Chords for Scoos. Interesting. Well, fortunately, our opponent was tempted into swinging with this 7/7 Knight of the Reliquary, so he doesn't get any land tutoring. And we get to untap, play Godless Shrine, slam a Verdict, and hold up Telling Time. So this is great. Opponent did get a little bit of Tireless Tracker value. Opponent plays another Tireless Tracker. That could be an issue. And we see Cryptic, Esper Charm, Flooded Strand. So we could Esper Charm. I kind of prefer holding up Cryptic because I feel like we're going to need a little more than Dig. Like, to a certain extent, Cryptic is also Dig, but it buys us a turn. I don't know. Maybe it evens out to the same thing. We could also... I mean, I topped the Esper Charm. Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. I forgot I was playing Telling Time there. Jesus. We can Esper Charm the Stony Silence if it does anything. As it stands, I'm going to do this. Make him discard stuff. And I'm going to take the hit here. So we draw Beck. This is great. So this means we can Cryptic, Stony Silence, and Beck, which I love. Opponent swings, and now the question is, like, do we want to Cryptic now and then Beck? Or do we want to do it on end step? I don't think it really matters. I suppose our opponent's going to crack all these clues trying to find something anyway. I think not blocking on his like attack, I'm not sure that was really a good play, honestly. Opponent looking for stuff, not finding anything. We get to Beck Call. This is pretty good. We can have blockers for days. And we draw a Fatal Push. So we can turn Fatal Push on with the fetch. We can push this tracker. Our opponent just drew an absolute crap ton of cards, but even so, we get to swing. That's nice. Spell Snare is a card that could be okay. And I decided to Spell Snare this. We could have saved it for a creature, theoretically, but I decided I'm not going to. Now, we could take up jar or we could take down jar. I think we need more action to get back in this game, so I'm going to take it down all the way to 2. If we hit a Beck, we might feel a little bad about it, but at the same time, I think we're going to be fine. I see Logic Knot, and I think, like, okay, so the opponent's not playing out creatures, has a lot of mana, could have held up, like, Coco while also playing some creature. Might have multiple Cocos in hand, in which case I want to top that Logic Knot. Our opponent sees through our bullshit, plays Company now, and here's a Knight. So, we have a push, and in order to activate the push or like activate Revolt, we need to Ghost Quarter or something. So I have a sneaking suspicion that our opponent only runs one red source. I could be wrong, but I decide most relevant to quarter the red source. They at least have fewer of them, and so if they draw a Kessig Wolf Run, this Noble Hierarch doesn't just kill us out of nowhere. So I'm going to quarter that. I'm going to push the Knight off of Jar, play Colonnade, and swing in. And now we have a Logic Knot up, and our opponent only has a Noble Hierarch. We have a lot of power on board next turn. So I'm trying to think about what our opponent can do to win here, and there isn't really anything. What can our opponent do to not die? Well, they could play a bunch of flyers, but we only have to get 2 of these 5 attackers through, so it seems really unlikely that's going to happen. Scooz, on the other hand, is going to be able to activate 1,000,000,000 times, and it's also going to be huge. So we're just going to counter the crap out of this, and our opponent scoops. So that was good. That was really good. Pretty solid matchup. I think we match up fairly well against these kinds of like value decks that just run a bunch of creatures that die to Path and Push and Verdict. So that's good. On to match 3.